And here we have Mike Nuss.
All right. So.
And a bunch of dogs.
So after George just treated me like a fucking rookie, like I've never jumped in a cold plunge before.
I didn't realize you're not a rookie.
Let me teach you how a cold plunge happens. One, you don't get all fucking psyched. The hardest part of a cold plunge is the first part of getting in. So, like, Dustin Miller, I'm going to call you out, dude. You fucking pansy ass. You're like, get in the cold plunge, you get the fuck out. If you're going to go on, I'm probably setting myself up for failure right now. If you're going to get in a cold plunge, stay in the fucking cold plunge once you get in it, because that's where the value is.
Yeah.
Oh. And here's how you successfully do a cold plunge. You calmly get in, you calmly stay in, and you breathe. But here's how you just get in and you just breathe. You know it's going to be cold. It's fucking cold. It's cold. So it's like, oh God, it's fucking cold. Oh God, it's fucking cold. No, that triggers your fucking lizard brain. You just breathe hard. And then you dunk down. Here's the key. If you listen to Andrew Huberman, you got to get your face. You got to submerge your face. If you don't submerge your face, it's worthless.
Debatable, but go on.
Not debatable at all. It's fucking scientific.
Oh my God. It's going to flood my basement. How do you feel?
If I kept doing that, I'd feel better, but I'm fucking cold.
Welcome to Frozen Millionaires, the show where we submerge successful people in ice-cold water, then sit them down to talk about how they've achieved success. I'm your host, George McCleary, and I have a penchant for ambition, for entrepreneurship, and for watching my friends suffer in cold water. No tech CEOs or Wall Street titans here. These are the self-made millionaires next door, and they're fresh out of the cold plunge and telling their stories. What's up, friends, and welcome to episode number 3 of Frozen Millionaires. That was Mike Nuss, and yep, he was genuinely cold. That 40-degree water is real. He told me earlier that he once did a cold plunge for 18 minutes to beat a friend's record. And while we don't recommend doing that, you gotta love the competitive instinct in these entrepreneurs. So Mike Nuss is a real estate investor and developer, and he and his partner Tyler Combs built Rarebird, a real estate company that specializes in acquiring, renovating, and managing residential assets. They also run Investor Lab, bar none the biggest and best real estate meetup in the Portland area. Mike is a big believer in the growth mindset, and the growth of his real estate portfolio is only part of the picture. Listen in and learn from a veteran who has witnessed the downturns and upswings of the market over the past 20 years of activity, and hear how he's approaching the challenges that we face in the market today. Here's Mike Nuss. Welcome to the show, my friend Mike Nuss. If you live in Portland and you're in real estate investment, you have heard of Mike Nuss. He and Tyler Combs, are part of the dynamic duo of Rarebird, Investor Lab. I guess those are your guys' two main brands. Mm-hmm. You guys are investing in real estate, really mainly in town. You've built an empire, a big one. And we're here today to talk to you and learn the story behind the whole thing.
Thanks for the intro. Let's get back on track because I can totally relate to the change of season. So I literally had a group text chat this morning going about the change of season, especially summer to fall, motivates me to get my ass in gear.
Yeah.
I think that like that relates a lot. This podcast is about being business owners and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
And I think one thing that like what's helped me be a business owner is understanding that I have these seasons in life when I am really effective and I'm really productive and I'm really on top of it. And I have these seasons in life where not necessarily that. Not a slacker by any means, above average, maybe good. And so like part of setting life up is setting it up so you understand when you're on point, when you can really accomplish things and get momentum and understand where you need momentum to drag you through seasons. Summer's a great example of that.
Oh, exactly. And I'm glad you brought this up because, you know, whether it's a day, an hour a week, or an entire season, so a literal season of summertime, just for the past several years, I've really taken summer to really kind of just have a good time. I'm still working, still getting stuff done, still trying to be my best self. However, I am not working nearly the grind that I do during the rest of the year. But when September rolls around, kids start school, that is sort of like my alarm clock going off. It's like, okay, I was able to fuck around during the summertime because I worked so hard during all those other months and everything. And so not everybody loves the alarm clock blaring in their ear, but it's been happening to me lately. And, part of me welcomes the change because, I like living in the grind. I like being immersed in it. It makes me feel good. It makes me feel productive and strong. And that's part of this podcast, right?
I want to go to one statement that you said, and then I want to talk about the myth of work-life balance.
Yeah.
Right? Because you said in the summer, I'm still trying to be the best I can. How do you measure being the best you can? Because you're not trying to be the best you can in business because you're not focused on business. You're focused on life and family, right?
Right.
And that's where I really don't believe in work-life balance. I think that's the fucking myth, right?
Right.
The idea of a balance beam means you're doing one and you're not doing the other. And that's just not how life works. I believe in harmony, which is you have different strings you play on your guitar to create a chord, and all those strings represent something you have going on in life. Sometimes you take your finger off that string to play a different chord. Sometimes you put more fingers on more strings to play a different chord, right? And so part of life is just harmony, finding where it's good to dig into life, which again lines really up well with fall. You have a change of season, you have change of sunlight, you have a change of schedules, you have kids in school. When kids are at school, and I was part of that group text, which is I feel more motivated, I think partly because I got to ship my kids off to school for the day.
Yeah.
Like now you're not distracted. And so like having a life that you really enjoy is understanding how to have harmony with all those different strings that you have going on in your life.
Totally. And one thing I think that successful people do is that they get that tunnel vision to absolutely dig in to the certain thing that they're trying to cultivate at that time. So if it's like a business thing that you just can't get out of your head and you've got energy that's really motivating you to stay up and really work on something, really dig into it, there's a part of me that always kind of chimes in, especially as I've become an adult and sleep has become so important. I think to myself, like, oh my God, tomorrow is going to be completely shot. It's going to be all fucked up if I don't get to bed. It's 12:30. I'm usually hitting the sack by 10:30, 11, something like that. But I'm in the zone. I'm in a flow state and I'm getting shit done. And this is an extremely productive use of my time. I think that one thing that successful entrepreneurs do is that they don't give in to the conventional wisdom of like, oh my God, I need sleep. Because what they're trading at that time actually is for more flow state, more productivity, and being able to have that tunnel vision to not eat, not sleep, to completely devote themselves to that thing. And when I look back on times in my life when I've done just that, those are the times when I've accomplished things or made breakthroughs that have set things in motion. And something like that is really powerful, and it runs completely counter to work-life balance. And it's exactly like you were saying. It's a season. It's that right there, it's less of a season and more of just a night, an hour. It's digging in.
Well, I love the fact that you use the word flow state, right? Because I think one of the downsides with kind of what came out of our generation was hustle porn, right? Like, you gotta hustle, and everyone fell in love with. If you're not hustling, you're not doing. This is not a good way to live a complete holistic lifestyle that you're happy with. Now, to the other end of that, getting in flow state and staying up all night because you are in flow state and you literally can't turn off the productive side of your brain. To me, that's not hustle. That's part of the harmony thing. That's just understanding you don't have any, this typically happens in the middle of the night, right? You can't sleep. You don't have any distractions. You may as well be productive. You may as well get some of those thoughts out of your mind. And that's where a lot of entrepreneurs can really thrive, purely because they don't have distractions and they can't get into that flow state.
Exactly.
And the other thing is I get into this a lot, especially typically the night before one of our meetups, our big meetings, I don't sleep. A lot of it's maybe I haven't had my presentation done, maybe it's half done, maybe I'm thinking about that. It doesn't matter where it's at. I'm probably not going to sleep the night prior, but at the same time, I am on fire the next day. I don't necessarily need that sleep to sustain me through the day.
No, man, you rise to the occasion. Yeah. It's not evident. I've seen these presentations that you do, and these times when it's you're the guy, you're the center of attention, all eyes on you. And if you told me, hey, I didn't sleep the night before, I'd almost be nonplussed by it. I'd be like, oh. Cool. And your shirt is also blue, I know that you are going to summon the energy to be able to perform and to be a gamer. And that's what high performers do. And it's whether you sleep, you don't sleep, you eat, you don't eat. it's what's happening. It's what's in front of your face. You can't delay it. So I'd imagine, so if we get to your story about how you started in real estate, you formed Rarebird, you formed this juggernaut. Take me back, because I know you got into the game. What was it, like a decade ago? Start from the beginning. Give me the whatever version you care to give.
I mean, I've had, like most people are 40 years old. I've had multiple variations of yourself. There's like pre-real estate developer, pre-Rarebird. And
actually, sorry, let me interrupt real quick.
Yeah.
Give us a quick synopsis of who you are and where you are right now, because, before I take back, I want to give people the present.
Yeah, good call. So, I mean, I'm an entrepreneur ever since I started, just because I didn't want to work for anyone else, right? The questions you're asking, honestly, probably won't resonate with true entrepreneurs, because the true reality is, and maybe this is a limiting belief, I'm just a lazy motherfucker that doesn't want to work for anybody else. I don't have a lot of discipline in life.
Raise your hand if you're also
right. So I got it. I remember this 4th grade. It's like career week, right? This is what a fireman is. This is what a teacher is. And then on Thursday they said, this is what an entrepreneur is. Right on Friday, right? What you want to be in your life. Well, I wrote entrepreneur because I didn't want to have a boss.
That's a big word for a 3rd grader.
4th grade.
4th grade.
It's Miss Schlitsky. Schlitsky was awesome.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah. So that's where it started. And then I started, I had a paper route. I worked for myself in 6th grade. I started a lawn mowing company when I was in high school. And then really for me, I got into real estate appraisal in high school, full-time into real estate right out of high school. 6 years later, I started my first appraisal firm. Hired my first employee within 6 or 8 months of that. Learned some lessons there, then hired a better employee 6 months after that, and then hired and these are employees where I need to train. Then I hired a licensed appraiser where now you don't need to train, they're like a contractor, and right. So built this business based off 2 other employees and kind of business principles, right? So that was my entry level into being an entrepreneur with actual books, QuickBooks, and tax returns, and CPA on retainer, and all that stuff. And that was essentially from 2004 to 2010. I shut the company down in 2018, but effectively stopped putting effort into it in 2010, which is when I switched over from being an appraiser and a shitty investor who lost a lot of money to now I'm going to be a full-time developer, investor, and learn how to do this right.
How do you be a shitty investor when you're an appraiser, when your livelihood depends on exactly
Great fucking question.
Knowing what shit's worth?
Thing is, this is I always have oh, you were an appraiser, this has to be easy for you, because a big portion of being successful at investing in real estate is knowing what value is.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
There's so much more to real estate investing than value. So I made the typical mistake that most people make, and a lot of appraisers make going into it, was I didn't know anything about actual profitability in real estate ownership. I knew value, I knew equity, I had really good income, I had really good credit, I could get a loan really easily, and I thought buying something for 90% of what it was worth was a good thing.
Sure.
It's things worth $400, I can buy it for $340. That's great, $60,000. The reality is...
Are you going to try and tell us that that's bad?
It's fucking terrible. But I thought it was great.
Go on.
I thought it was right because so you buy it for $360. We're going to have closing costs when you buy it.
It was $340 a minute ago, but go ahead.
Okay. So you buy it for $340. You've got closing costs when you buy it. If you use other people's money, you have finance charges on top of it.
Yeah.
Whatever renovations you have to get a market ready, then you do sell it. Then you have 6% in fee cost to sell it, which is 5% if you negotiate good with the listing.
A lot of costs, a lot of mouths to feed.
Exactly. So that $60,000 quickly gets down really low. I even remember the first, and here's anti-tax. The first really bad decision I made was anti-tax. And so in the mid 2000s, I did my first acquisitions in housing were between 2003 and 2008. I think my second or third acquisition was new construction pre-sale. That was a really good business model where you essentially get into escrow before they ever shovel dirt anything. And when the market's going up 10, 15, 20% per year, and it takes 90 days to break ground, 6 months to build, now you've got 9 months, anywhere from 10 to 15% of appreciation in before you actually have to buy the home.
Right.
Okay. So I did this twice on new construction. One for a personal residence, which I really shouldn't have bought looking back because I wasn't financial savvy enough and I just didn't understand personal finance. The other one was an investment. And it was, I think my escrow price was $220. When I was done, the day I closed on it, it was worth like $300.
Wow.
And this was in like
what year was this?
This was 2006.
Yep, there it is.
Right.
Okay,
so the reality is of that 220, I might have put 10 or 15, might have cost 10 or 15 grand. I could sell it for 300. Even if I paid 10% in fees, netted 270, I'd make 50 grand.
Yeah.
Great deal. I'm really good with that.
Yeah. Maybe not sustainable over the long term, though.
I mean, if you can like write a check for 10 grand on day 1 and go get a check for 50 on day 30, that's fucking amazing.
But I thought, wasn't the timeline like
9 months?
9 months.
Yeah, but it was 5 grand earnest money.
Oh yeah. So yeah,
7 grand to record. So that, to me, those are really.
And if
good
you're
numbers.
acquainted with value, like you are a real estate appraiser, then you can be like, okay, well, they're building to the top of the market in this area. Top of the market is about this. I'm into it for this.
If you're smart,
this should work.
Appraisers don't think like that. First of all, I have very little respect for the appraisal industry.
Ooh.
I didn't think like that because I wasn't trained like that.
That's a hot take. As investors or just in general?
Don't get me started on appraisers. Like, do you want to go down that rabbit hole?
I mean, an appraiser talking about appraisers. I mean, yeah, it sounds like good content to me.
It is one of the least qualified professions in this world for what they do or what they're expected to provide service level.
Don't they go to school and get licensed and all that stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
To learn how to fill out a form.
Yeah. It's like a book report, basically, right?
Yeah, but that book report in the bank's eyes, when you hire an appraiser, you expect that book report to come with a lot of theories, facts, principles, application of stuff in the real life world.
Yeah.
Appraisers don't do that. They fill out a fucking form. They make up math. They make it happen. That can be another podcast. I can't remember where we started on this, but
so you're an investor. You come out of your appraisal company.
Anti-tax. So many people are so fucking anti-tax. So on this decision in and of itself, I could have bought it, put it on the market. 30 days later, had a $50,000 check.
Yeah.
But my CPA is like, oh, you're gonna pay 25. It's income tax. It's not gains.
Yeah, it's ordinary income.
Yeah, exactly. So you're gonna pay 25 grand in tax. And I was like,
ooh,
oh, I don't want to do that. So I held it as a rental. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't even say it cash flowed. I think my mortgage payment was like $1,500, and the rent was like $1,800 or $1,900.
That's pretty good.
And the mortgage payment included taxes and insurance, vacancy, property management, maintenance, like all those other factors that come into it.
Right.
And the other part of it is, well, this was 2006, 2007, so the market hadn't turned, right?
Right.
And here's where it's really important to make sure you're cash flow positive. That sounds like a good deal. $1,800 rent, your mortgage payment, PITI is $1,400. That's not cash flow. And the other part of it is, so now the market changes and my rent goes down to $1,600. Okay, so now maybe it's not as negative. It's not, maybe instead of break even, it's a little negative. It was the 12 months of fucking vacancy that killed me.
Ooh.
And that's what we don't factor in is...
Where was this house?
This was in fucking Wilsonville, Villebois.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the new construction, that makes sense.
Great neighborhood. So because I wanted to avoid tax, I put myself in a poor financial position, and then the market changed.
Right.
And whenever it comes down to real estate, like... we're going into real estate when it's a business podcast, but... everything in real estate comes down to controlling.
It's going to end up in that direction a lot of times. I am a real estate guy. That's no secret. And so are you. So yeah, no, we're speaking the language. People understand it.
And this applies to business too, is like everything comes down to when you having control when you come to the market. You have no control over market conditions. That's 100% outside of your purvey. But you can set yourself up to make the choice to bring something to the market when the market conditions say this is a good time to bring it to market. Right. You never want to be in a position. Think of all the startups that have been having, and they're planning on IPOing in 2022 or 2023. They're fucked because the market changed, right? And so now you have to have the means to be able to come to market at a time where it's appropriate. If you don't have the means to come to the market when it's time to be appropriate, and you have to come to the market when it's not a good time, that's when you get slaughtered. And so I made a bad decision because I wanted to avoid tax. I looked at it as avoiding tax instead of making 25 grand. That put me in a position where I no longer had control of when I was coming to the market. Huge lesson for me. Huge lesson for me in that aspect.
But you didn't learn that right away. You learned it after the market changed and you had a massive vacancy and you were just feeding into that alligator month after month. So that stuck with you. And so then going forward, what were your big takeaways from that? Other than like, hey, feed the market when the market is ready.
Yeah.
Ready for a house like this.
Yeah.
What else?
That's a really good example. And I think right now is a really good analogy to add to that. So myself in 2008, when this was happening, it was pay every expense, pay the HOA, pay the property. Like it was pay every single expense. I had no mind to cash flow. I just didn't want to be in debt to anything.
Right.
Fast forward to the lessons I learned in 2022, or how I managed 22 as a real estate developer with a 52-unit, $26 million condo pipeline.
Right.
I didn't care about debt as much as I care about cash flow, right? Because at the end of the day, cash flow is what gets you to the end of the tunnel. Mm-hmm. And if all you're doing is eroding your cash flow to stay out of debt or to stay in the good graces of the fucking tax collector, that shoots you in the foot to get you to the end of the tunnel.
But in cash flow, in that respect, in terms of like what you're doing in 2022 and 3 with development, that's a different type of cash flow. That's sale of units, right?
No, I'm just talking about literally cash flow, right? So in the heart of the summer and fall of 2022, sales weren't happening, right? So it's not like you're managing all this cash coming in. You're looking at it like, I have this amount of expense to get to the cash to the end of the road. And so that means those rare occasions, like in a good market, cash flow coming in is not a rare occasion. It just fucking happens all the time.
Sure.
In a down market like we saw in 2022, which is literally 2022 was worse than 2008. Because 2008, you didn't feel till 2011. 2022, you didn't feel it in May, you felt it in July. Right. So 2022, in all reality, people won't believe this, but 22 was harder than 2008.
Wow.
For a lot of reasons.
That's a hot take.
We can unpack that if you want, and we can get into it. But
yeah.
The lessons I learned from 2008 and all that part in 2022 was you can always make people whole as long as you can get to the end of the road.
Sure.
So using your cash flow to make people whole in the short term and not keeping your eye on getting to the end run is actually worse for everyone in the.
When you say making people whole, you're talking about like servicing your debt, paying off,
property taxes, right? So like on all of our development, we don't have impound accounts for property taxes. So when you've got 15 properties, which accounts to like $110,000 tax bill, do you write the $110,000 tax bill, or you say, you know what? They can't fucking foreclose on me. They can't.
It takes them several years anyway.
Yeah, in Oregon, it's a 5-year timeline.
Yeah,
right. And what do they charge? Like 1% per year, right? So it's like the finance costs and fees on my $110,000 of property taxes is nothing compared to just trying to get to the end.
I'll never forget that text, that photo rather, that you sent to the group thread. It was in the fall when all the tax bills came out. And it was with all of these tax bills, because all the envelopes are very distinctive. I get a handful of them myself. Fanned out like you'd taken a deck of cards and kind of just fanned them out, but it was like a stack of what looked like 50 of them or something like that, and with a caption from you saying something like tax time.
Yeah. Well, and that's a great thing because you also have to compartmentalize in business, right? So I'm talking about specifically our development company. That was like 15 to 17 properties.
Yeah.
I paid all the taxes on our rentals, right? Because the development company needed cash, needed liquidity to get to the end of the table.
Yeah.
Right? Compartmentalizing our rentals don't need that. Our rentals have month-to-month rent coming in, and it's baked into the performance. So it's like you make hard decisions. Like so paying taxes in your rentals is a really easy decision. It's built into the business model. 2022 is not built into our condo pipeline business model. And so now we have to make decisions. And the thought process is like, well, I can use that $110,000 to work with our lenders to ensure none of our properties get taken.
Right.
And get to the end of the pipeline to some profitability, so then I can go back and pay those property taxes. Or I can pay the property taxes, be good with the government, who I really don't care about anyways because they've never really done anything for me, to then be bad with my lender, who then takes my properties away, which are the only thing that lead me to profitability.
Right. And plus you have an equity position in that. There is a cushion.
Yes.
And so essentially what you're doing is kind of borrowing money at a pretty favorable rate from the government. So it's not really borrowing, because it's essentially an obligation that you're choosing not to fulfill, just kind of kick the can down the road.
But that's essentially what in your pro forma, that's what it becomes.
Right. But if you did that with a lender, it would be extraordinarily more costly.
Yep. And why? And this is great I always get into real estate. It's hard for me to just talk business and not real estate.
Dude, talk the real estate, man.
Okay. So, timelines, right? 1 to 4 unit residential world, golden right now because it works on 30-year timelines.
Right.
Commercial world, fucking terrible right now because it works on 1 to 2, 5, or 10-year timelines.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
All this bridge debt that's getting fucked right now.
So the property tax assessor work on a 5-year timeline. Our lender works on a 12-month timeline. It's really easy to deliberate who you pay based on the timelines. Like, and that's one thing I really love. Like Alex Hormozy, for example, is like if you put things on timelines, just stress test things by timelines, it really gives you clarity in the decisions you should be making in your business.
Totally.
Yeah.
So tying that into sort of like your full arc, you know, how you came up and everything. So you learned some hard lessons in 2008, it sounds like. And so taking that knowledge with you, like, you know, 2011, 2012, the market starts coming back. So had you been sitting on the sidelines? Were you picking things up when things were cheap, or like when did you really kind of get back into the game in earnest? Because I know you've been at it like in earnest for like a decent amount of time.
Yeah. So 2009 is when I signed up for Rich Dad Poor Dad. Wasted 26 grand. Don't ever fucking do that. And that was like the entry to my transition.
Wait, there was like a mastermind back then, or what was that?
Oh, it's just any guru, Than Merrill, any fucking guru that comes to town, take this free course. I'm looking for 12 motivated people. No, they're looking for 12 people. They'll write them a $20,000 check, regardless if they're successful or not.
Yeah.
Avoid that shit. Go to your local meetups, all that stuff.
Yes.
Right. So
Couldn't agree
2009
more.
is when I wrote that check. So I wrote the $26,000 check. Do you know the one thing that gave me value out of that?
What's that?
Was after it. And the reason I wrote 26 is because I needed a mentor, but the mentor was 3 states away. I didn't even actually know my state. Another problem. But that mentor was like, before he even came into town, he's like, hey, you going to your local RIA? I was like, what's that?
Oh.
Meetup. Are you going to go meet other people that do what you do in your area? That's all it is. Networking.
So your impetus to joining the local RIA cost you $26K.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, it cost me $26K to go write a $100 check to have year access to these meetings.
Oh, that's great. I love it. Hey,
right.
yeah, and worth every penny. Yeah.
Which is why we created the meetings that we do, right? So 2009 is when I wrote the $26,000 check. Early 2010 is when I went to that first RIA meeting, and literally that's when everything changed for me. So in 2010, like I had a short sale, so that not paying the tax bill turned into a short sale.
Right.
So like my credit wasn't good. I cashed out my 401k to write that $26,000 check. So nice. I just was a worthless human being on a piece of paper. But I know real estate really, really well. So it's like where everyone goes when you don't have any money and you don't have credit. You get into wholesaling, you get into flipping, you create partnerships, you create relationships, and you create experience to get to the point where now you become bankable.
Right.
And so 2010 to 2012, 2013 was that period of time. Started buying rentals in 2012, and then 2014 was like the next iteration. That's when we actually, in my mind, became a company.
You say we. So at what point did you meet Tyler and decide that you guys were going to hitch your wagons to each other?
Yeah, 2010, and that was inside of another partnership, which those guys that ran it were crooks. And so August of 2011 is when Tyler and I broke off of that.
Was that Pinio or was
No, it was local guys that are just crooks. So August 2011, we break off from them. So what that meant for Tyler breaking off was that meant he had to ask investors to come off properties they were lent on, go to an unsecured debt of position so he could sell a property and then figure out a way to pay you in the back. So Tyler brought bad debt to the table. There were a couple bad projects that those guys mismanaged that we actually then own and had to finish. And then on top of that, I didn't have any financial loss because I didn't have any financial value to gain to that partnership, but I had a year's worth of time. I mean, during that period of time, so I was based on getting paid on the back end. So right. I negotiated like 26 transactions in a year. All bought, all sold, seller, living rooms. Like that's where I became a ninja inside of a living room, was that period of time. I didn't get any income from it, but I got all the experience I needed so that between 2011 and now...
But you're in partnerships. Certainly there is some skin to be had on the end of those deals.
Partnership is just partnership agreements. It wasn't an LLC, right? So there's no ownership component. There's a piece of paper that said I was owed this if there's profitability. But when people are crooks, profitability is so easy to hide.
So they fudge the profitability, make it look like it makes nothing, and therefore you're entitled to nothing.
100%.
Ouch.
Yeah. So learned a lot of lessons there, and then from August 2011 to then when we created our brand, launched our brand May 2014. So August of 2011 to May 2014 is kind of that incubator phase where we established the momentum needed to become the iteration that we are now.
Right.
Or future iterations.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And that iteration is you and Tyler, and you guys are acquiring rentals. You're doing a lot of seller financing. You're also a development company. You're building mainly with a residential infill and within the residential infill plan, and that's infill residential development essentially. Is that it? Is there more?
So 14 is when we started our property management company and our brokerage, right? So up until that point, we were flipping a lot of homes, which meant we were selling a lot of homes. We were buying a lot of homes. We were holding some, but selling the most of them. So at that time, I think 2014, we maybe had 11 units. And then between 2014 and 2015, we went from like 11 or 12 to like 40.
Wow.
So in that year span, we already had the sales activity. Well, brokerage makes sense to just keep that expense inside of your company. And then going from 12 units to like...
So you started a brokerage.
We started a brokerage. That made sense, right?
Sure.
And honestly, I don't even think we launched that brokerage until like 2017. So we created it in 2014.
And this is under the Rarebird flag.
So Rarebird Incorporated Development Company, Rarebird Property Management, Rarebird Brokerage. It's all same name.
So that's when you brought everything in-house, like property management.
Yep.
You have enough doors at this point
Yep.
to actually have an in-house property manager.
Yep, exactly.
Got it.
Yep. So now... like we were an internal company the public knew nothing about, then branded to become this external public facing company. And so now it's Rarebird Acquisitions, the development company, property management, brokerage, and then we had Rarebird Investor Network. That was the meetup type stuff that we did.
Where was your energy going? Because if you've got, you got a lot of different hats. You got property management, so you've got a guy for that, and you've got brokerage. And from what I've gathered, Tyler is more of like the brokerage guy. He's more like just to the real estate brokers. And you're more on like the investment and acquisition side of things. So is it fair to say like during this time that you've got, you got your eye on all the different parts of this thing as it's being built, but are you mainly focusing your energy just on like the, development, flipping, acquisition part of the business?
My energy, yes. Right. So that's the beauty of having partnerships is you can divide and conquer, and then employees, you have leverage, right? So the property management company, we had Catherine at the time. She did a really good job like getting the start in that.
Right.
So the way property management company started, Catherine and I both got licensed. She ended up getting a job offer like a year and a half later that was just a dream job for her, so she didn't stay with us long term.
A dream job in property management? That exists?
It wasn't in property management. That's why she was no longer with us.
There it is.
So, but she was president at the beginning. So, like, she did a lot of the stuff I'm not capable of doing. Finding the software, all that stuff. And then we shared lease-up duties. We shared all, like, vendor coordination, doing the management agreement, doing the lead. Like, we just shared all those roles. So, like, in the company's infancy stage as an owner, there's two ways to build a company in my mind. One, you just hire someone that's then going to go run it for you and do everything. So you hire a top and then they do it all.
Right. Or
then you're involved in the bottom and work up. And now the first route's the best route to go, but it requires capital.
Right.
And we just didn't have that at the time based on all the other stuff we were doing. So now you're sweat equity, right? So you either have capital and you pay someone to build it, or you build it with sweat equity. So we built property management through sweat equity. From 2014 to 17, we didn't even start our brokerage because Tyler didn't have a principal license requirements, right? So it was hang the license at another company, and then we built a team inside of that company, and then ultimately started our brokerage, and then the team moved our brokerage.
So the team was doing what now?
Just buying real estate. Our brokerage isn't a brokerage. It's just investors. It masquerades as group coaching. Our agents are just investors, and we just coach them. That's all it is.
And basically, what they're paying for is kind of just like proximity to you guys and you guys' knowledge base, so that they can become, they can continue to grow their portfolios and become better investors.
We give them nothing from support from a brokerage standpoint.
No business cards. I mean, what do brokerages even do? Like give a website? I don't know.
And TC and training and all this other bullshit that people need, but investors don't like. The brokerage is providing education is worthless to an investor because an investor doesn't want to be a broker. They want to be an investor.
Right.
And that's the value we have is we have a license. We understand everything that comes with the responsibility and requirements of having a license, but we're investors.
Right.
And so the reality is there's a lot of commissions out there when you're buying and selling properties. And if you know how to navigate that fine line of being a licensed professional and an investor, there's a lot of money to be saved.
Right.
And so think of it this way, like saying, for example, a guy bought $20+ million of real estate in a 3-month period of time.
This is one of your brokers.
One of my brokers.
Investors.
One of our brokers. He would probably pay 10 times what we charge in brokerage fees just for proximity to us, right? Because he understands that one piece of advice for me can be worth tens of thousands of dollars.
Right.
It's like, wait. You wrote this as a cash offer? Let's just structure this differently. Like, instead of cashing them out in 10 days, can we cash them out in 60 and set something up? And now you saved 60 days or 45 days of mortgage costs. Like,
right.
Or like, let's do 6 months of seller financing and save $5,000 in origination fees. So that's the beauty of being really good at understanding everything in real estate, is like one good decision can literally save you 5, 10, 20 grand.
That's true.
And so that's the value of being at our brokerage, is we've got enough experience that it's like, hey, saying, no, just structure it this way. Save 20 grand. He's like, oh, thanks, Mike. You just paid for 2 years of our commission fees.
Yeah, there you go.
Right? Like, so that's what our brokerage is. And
I like how he puts it in those terms.
Yeah, he does. I love it.
And the next day you earned your keep for the next 7 years.
Well, and here's the beautiful thing about it is, like, I have monthly coaching clients that pay me every single month, and then there's months we don't have any meetings. Like, I'm supposed to have one today with Dustin. He's like, I gotta cancel. I gotta put another 2 hours of fucking tattoo on my leg. Mm-hmm. They're not
hashtag priorities.
Yeah. And it's not like they're not going to pay me because we didn't have a meeting today.
Yeah.
They understand that essentially they committed to this year's worth of coaching. Like, ideally it's a year's worth of coaching. It costs X and you get 24 meetings. Well, if we get 20 meetings, that's not going to change what they pay me, because the reality is the value I provide them, whether we meet or not, is significantly greater than what's charged.
And that's one of your streams of income now, is coaching. So you become a real estate expert. You're in the investment arena, in seller finance, in development. So you're taking on clients. Give yourself a quick plug when it comes to Mike Nuss, the coach.
Yeah. I think, like, going back to that bad partnership, I'll always remember this from one of the guys who I respected at the time and no longer respect. He really kind of broke me down in a way that I never thought of it till that period of time. Is like, you do a really good job of understanding how things work. I think if there's a gift that I was given, I can see how things work. I can't do any of these pieces. I can't swing a hammer. I can't see a screwdriver. I don't fucking hang drywall. None of that bullshit. I can tell you the entire construction process without going to any type of resource, right? So I understand how things work, which means I understand how things rely upon each other and how you can pull one lever to get another lever, right? And so when you understand all the little pieces of mechanics, rearranging the mechanics that the world tells you should be in typically adds a lot of value. So I'm pretty contrarian in how I think. I like to challenge people in their thought process. I like to challenge why you're doing things your certain way. And that curiosity and that mindset in my life, and now specifically in real estate, when you challenge how retail real estate is supposed to be done inside this world that the stupid brokers of the world tell you to do things.
Yeah.
And you say, well, no, this is just stupid tradition telling you should do it this way. But if we do it this way, we can still do it, and you can make 10 grand more. The seller can make 10 grand more, and everyone's happy. Mm-hmm. Like, isn't that great? Mm-hmm. So that's one thing. That's, for me as a coach, I can see all those things.
So that's your value proposition.
My value proposition is seeing things other people don't to allow them to be successful. Specifically when it comes to our brokerage coaching, is recognizing where you should spend your time and where you shouldn't.
Right.
I've done this so many times where one of our brokers like, I'm working on this seller. This isn't worth anything. I'm not even going to call him back, but this one I'm going to hound. And I'm like, that's the dumbest thing I've heard you say today. I've said this a lot. I was like, well, that's dumb. Why would you spend all your energy at this? Because this really isn't a good opportunity. For these reasons, I can see why you think it's a good opportunity. For all these other reasons, this is why it's not a good use of your time. Stop doing that.
Right.
I can see why you think this is not an opportunity. But for all these other things you're not seeing, this is a golden opportunity. Don't call them back for 6 months. Call these people every single day.
Got it.
And that just comes from 20 plus years of experience and understanding the motivation. This is really the beautiful thing about appraisal for me, is understanding everyone has their own motivations. And our job as a business owner, as a leader of people, as an acquirer of real estate is to understand people's motivations so you can lead into their motivations and their biases.
Right.
Yeah.
Got it. And so is this like the next chapter for you? Is to focus on coaching, or are you going to focus more on development or more acquisitions? Because it sounds like the whole arc has been kind of like appraisals, acquisitions, kind of building the portfolio, building the Rarebird empire, if you will. And then it's been more on development and then to coaching as well. We've talked about a lot of different ways to skin the cat here. Mm-hmm. Real estate is a very multifaceted business, but all of this has just been within the realm of essentially residential and multifamily real estate, correct? Mm-hmm. So then today you're focused mainly on development. Isn't that right? I
wouldn't say that's right. I'd say it's a really shiny distraction right now because of the pipeline you got to get through, right? And getting through that pipeline is the key to unlocking some other things you want to do in life.
Sure.
I would say this, like if you look at my track record, like from 29 to 2010 moving forward, it was be a developer, get out of debt, learn some skills. Start a business, grow that business, learn some more skills, acquire some assets. During that period of time, still developing properties, making lump sums of cash.
And when you say, I guess what we're classifying as development is like flips and new construction.
Yeah, think of it this way. To me, a development is something, it's short term, less than 2 years, ideally 6 months or less. Right?
Ideally.
With the whole goal of creating a lump sum of cash.
Right.
A taxable lump sum of cash. Okay? That is now, you use that taxable lump sum of cash to put food on the table, pay all your bills, and buy other real estate.
Right.
And then the buying other real estate is now acquiring assets, right? So now it's getting out of debt, creating income, creating cash, and then or net worth via cash, and then trading that cash and net worth for assets. And then getting enough assets and building those assets to the point where your assets work for you. We all know this, but the reality is if you don't have a fucking penny to your name, no credit, no cash, 0.0001% of people that get into real estate will replace everything they want with cash flow within a year. The reality is you not only need to acquire assets, which takes a period of time, you need to season assets, which means you have a time period after every one of those acquisitions. Mm-hmm. So like for us, 2012 to 2016 is when we went from 0 units to like 70. So there's our asset acquisition time, which was 2 years. And then from 2016 to, I don't think we started actually taking cash until 2020. So another 4 years was the seasoning time. So like 6 to 7 years, we never took a dime of cash flow from our asset portfolio. Because it was
all reinvesting it.
It was all reinvested. It was all repositioning the assets to create equity. And cash flow is a byproduct of equity. So the first thing is acquire the asset. The second thing is reposition the asset so now you have equity. And then the third thing is now letting that equity grow and work for you. And so there's a process to get there to the end of the day, at least in the low cap markets like we're in. Maybe you go to Memphis or Kansas City and it looks different.
Yeah, in a place like Portland, though, it's an appreciation market versus a cash flow market. And there was a whole investor lab like devoted to cash flow versus
battle.
Appreciation. Yeah, no, and I remember it was really good.
Which and the thing is like there's no right or wrong. There's only right or wrong for you.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Right, but that was your strategy essentially, is build up your asset base. And when you say seasoning, so a lot that is different in different contexts. But in this context, it sounds like your seasoning is holding the asset long enough to let it stabilize, let it actually, let the rents increase, let the cash flow actually happen, so that when you either reposition that equity elsewhere or do something with it, you have options. Yeah. You've got ways to cut it up, especially if you've seller financed it. And one of the greatest things I learned from Mike Nuss was how you move seller notes around. And so we won't get into the nitty gritty necessarily of all these little intricate real estate practices and everything, but I will tell you one thing. This is one thing that Mike told me. God, it was 2 or 3 years ago. I think we were on the golf course, and so if you know Mike Nuss, you know that he's a regular guy, and the whole point of this podcast is talking to quote unquote the millionaires next door. And I can't think of a better example than Mike Nuss. He drives a shitty ass car. He's a normal, plain spoken guy. And so,
I literally had one of my employees the other day, like, he literally asked me, why are you so middle class?
Hopelessly middle class Mike Nuss is living a regular life. But so I didn't really know this yet because I just gotten to know him a little bit. And so I asked Mike, I was like, hey man, because he did not, like, he was not one to flex. He was not one that I could tell right away, like, hey, this guy's really crushing it. I really had to dig a lot. And even after digging, I'm not entirely certain how all the digging has actually revealed like all the information I wanted to get. But I asked him at the time, I said, hey, Mike, I can't tell. Maybe you can help me out here. So what do you do with your money? What do you do to like enjoy yourself? What is it that you do after you make a deal, sell a property, flip something, you just put 30, 50, 100, 150K in your pocket. What do you do with that? And I was expecting to learn about like Mike's hobby or, the fact that he owns exotic pets or like really likes cars or, has a place in Mexico he loves to go down and go surfing at or something. No, you know what Mike told me? He said, buy more real estate. And it with like no hesitation, just turned to me, just like dead stare in the eye, like buy more real estate. and I was like, haha, yeah, that's good. No, really, what are you doing? He's like, and he just kind of stared right back at me like he is right now. And I was really taken aback. I'm like, this motherfucker's serious. This is really what he does. He will just earn a bunch of money and then just plow it back into real estate. And that's another kind of like a pillar of this podcast is kind of the delayed gratification. Mm-hmm. It's the building up of assets. And what I heard you describe before, it sounds a lot like, and correct me if I'm wrong, where you build up your asset base and then slowly but surely sort of swap it for cash flow in a manner that you see fit. Mm-hmm. And the cash flow, once you begin doing that, can come, really quickly in a small amount. Or if you hold on for the long term, you can have an asset base that has been tax advantaged and building up and compounding interest until it's absolutely massive. And then once at that point you trade it in for cash flow, then you have freedom to the highest extent.
Yeah, because it takes a while for your assets to work for you. Let's go over a typical BRRRR. Like I love to just like theoretically apply shit to reality, right? A theoretical reality. Let's go over a BRRRR.
Yeah, let's go land and make believe.
So in Portland, low cap market, to be successful in a BRRRR, and here's what I say about Portland. Every BRRRR is a good flip because you have to create equity to make it work. Not every flip is a good BRRRR. Reason being is in order to BRRRR, and like a couple years ago, you could be successful with a BRRRR if you could have 70% of your value at the end of the day, right? So
BRRRR is buy,
renovate, refinance, repeat, right? So in order to do that, you had to have your acquisition price and all your repairs and all your soft holding costs be no more than 70% of your after repair value. Right. So now you go to the bank, you get a 70% LTV, you get an amortized loan, and because you're paying down the loan, because you're making principal payments, at the end of the day, what that typically resulted in Portland meant you're going to get $100, maybe $200 of actual cash flow. Right. So let's apply that to a $700,000 asset, right? So what's 30% is $210. So you buy something for $400, you put $90 into it, you're into it for $490, it appraises at $700, you go get a $490,000 loan, 70% of the $700. Okay? So you have $210,000 in equity and you have $200 a month of cash flow. It doesn't change anyone's life.
Nope.
At all.
I've done this exact thing. I even made a video on it recently.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm literally thinking of a specific property. So that specific property brought in $3,500 a month after the initial reposition. Okay, and that creates $200 a month of cash flow. It sucks.
Oh, $3,500 in gross.
Yep.
Okay, I thought you meant it was cash flow. I was like, dude, how did you do that? That's amazing.
2 units grossing. It was probably more. It was more like 36 or 38, maybe 38 or 39.
Right. But your head's above water, but not by a lot.
Exactly. So we've got equity, which doesn't change your life because we're not putting equity to use, and we've got $200 of cash flow split against two people. That doesn't change anything, right? That's 12 months after you've owned the property because you bought it, you renovated it, you leased it up, you got a loan, you've owned it for 12 months and you have nothing to show for it other than I'm like a fifth of the way to becoming a millionaire.
Okay, devil's advocate, what you have to show for it is $210K of equity that you haven't paid taxes on. You've increased your net worth. Your asset base is, what you're worth at the end of the day is assets minus liabilities. It's gone up $210,000. And yeah, your head's barely above water. You're not buying jet skis with it, but you haven't paid 1 cent to the government. And when you take that equity after you've seasoned it, so, got to wait a year or two. Shout out to Laurel, my accountant. And she'll tell you, you got to wait a little bit. You got to season it. But then you take that equity and you put it into something, you got 3 or 4 more of these. Suddenly you got $800K that you're putting down on something that cost a few $1,000,000 that does cash flow.
I'm so glad you went here. Because until that event happens, you don't have anything to show for it. You have bragging rights.
Yeah, you just
have ego.
Yeah, you hold your nose and wait. Right?
Yeah, but it doesn't do anything for you other than like, I got this property and it's $200,000 of equity. That $200,000 of equity does nothing for you for your life because all that $200,000 of equity does was give you a percentage of $200 a month of net cash flow.
For that time.
Yes.
But for all
correct. And that's the
time
seasoning
forward
portion of it. So for 12 months, it's done nothing for me. At 12 months or whatever, maybe 9 months, I can say, I'm going to sell that property.
We can agree on that. Yeah, for sure.
Right. So now you can sell that property to then now have that equity work for you. But then is that a taxable event? You can't 1031, right? So like, that's not a really great financial savvy move. So that's
what's long-term capital gains at that point?
It could be, sure, but you're paying, it's not a 1031 level, so you can't avoid those, you can't defer those taxes, you have to pay them, right? So that's the seasoning. When you're seasoning your portfolio, you have limited options.
Right.
So now let's fast forward another year, another 12 months. So that's 12 months after owning it. It's great. I'm not like complaining. This is fucking awesome. This changes most people's lives. But once you get into it, you realize it doesn't change your life after 12 months. Let's go to 12 months, 24 and 36 months. So 12 months later, now we raise rent 10%, $3,800. Now our $200 a month of cash flow goes to $580. Okay. And in that period of time, that $700,000 asset went up 10%. Let's use 5%, right? So it went up 35 grand. So now that 210 turned into 245 of equity, and that 200 of cash flow turned into 580 of cash flow.
Right.
Go another year. So now you raise rent again, and now we're 43. Now you add 430. So now you're over $1,000 a month of cash flow, and then another 5%. Now your equity's up to like 275. It's that seasoning period that now gives you the ability to change your life. Because after 2 years, now you can do a 1031 exchange. You can take that 275 grand of capital, tax-free, defer it, move into an asset, which you can't do in the first 12 months. Now you have $1,000 a month of cash flow based on the asset you have. You do a 1031 exchange and you take that equity and put it into another forced equity property. You do that again. So now you double your equity from 275 to 550. And now that cash flow goes from $1,000 a month to $1,200 a month. And then 2 years later, that cash flow is from $1,200 a month to $1,900 a month, and the equity's from $550 to $600, right? So it's that seasoning period. It's stacking of equity. It's stacking of cash flow. And so there's this period of time where you have to acquire it, you have to reposition it, you have to season it, and that's delayed gratification. And this is where I love my dad. Like, he always fucking instant gratification. That's what I do with my kids.
Never met Mr. Nuss, but I can tell that's a spot-on impression.
He's so good. And because we're able to delay gratification, now you're in a position, you have so many options in life, right? Now you have a lot of equity, not just a little, you have a lot of equity. Yeah. Not just a little cash flow, you have a lot of cash flow. And so now you can say, well, portfolio maximization. And so like going on to like the coaching thing, where's my next iteration of life is I understand so much now how to build a portfolio, how to reposition a portfolio, how to season a portfolio, and then how to maximize a portfolio. so many people need those skills and they don't have them, that's where I see my niche fitting in and kind of the next iteration of it.
Dude, I couldn't agree more. That's the most valuable thing, honestly. If I had to put you into a hole, it would be that one. It would be being able to maximize the portfolio and maximize the overall strategy. Mm-hmm. Like the guy who sits up in the stands calling the plays from the top down view, not the sideline guy. You're the guy that's up there calling the plays. And that's an amazing skill. And so I encourage anybody out there who's listening and wants to really maximize their portfolio, whether it's one single house or you got 100 doors, talk to Mike, because he will help you maximize all those returns and give you a long-term plan that's going to change your life in 5-10 years, something like that. It's the long term. It's real estate is the get rich slow game, isn't it?
Here's the thing. I don't want to get someone started. Like
don't call Mike if you have one single house.
If you're just getting started, don't call me, because you need someone that helps you with lead gen. You need someone that helps you with like those things. I want to shoot myself. Like I'd rather shoot myself than go over that.
Right.
But if you already have lead gen, if you already have a start, if you already have opportunities, that's where I'm really helpful. I appreciate the plug that you're providing. I'm a type of guy to help you go faster in a better direction. I'm not the guy to help you get started.
No, that's fair. I'm glad that you qualified like kind of the person that you want to work with, because you're not really a guy for noobs. You're kind of a guy who's looking for guys that are a little bit more experienced, guys that are a little further down the road to be able to maximize something that's already there. Is that about right?
Yeah, 100%. I don't like, you can't steer a car until it's moving, and I don't like starting cars.
Right. Yeah, that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
So you've come a long way. It's been an amazing journey. Thanks so much for telling us all about it. What kind of mindsets and what sort of practices did you do along the way to kind of help kind of keep you in the game, like keep engaged, like keep marching forward, like in the face of adversity? You went through the first real estate downturn, and then, now we got high interest rates. You've seen a little bit of everything. How would you describe, like, what have you done to kind of stay in the game and stay engaged and keep your mindset right during that time?
Yeah, two things. One, surround myself with people that are smarter than me. And even if you have to pay to get into a room with people smarter than you, both of us have done that.
Shout out to GoBundance.
Some of the best money you ever spend, right? The other thing is I do a pretty damn good job of living in the now, right? Like one of my favorite books, Eckhart Tolle, Power of Now. It doesn't mean I don't think about the future. It doesn't mean I don't get worried about the future. It doesn't mean I don't think about 12 months of cash flow. It doesn't mean I don't think of those things. It doesn't mean I don't look at the past. And it doesn't mean that those things don't affect me. But for like the majority of the time, I do a decent job of saying like, I recognize what I can control in the future, which is nothing. And I recognize what I can change in the past, which is nothing. And so then that allows me to kind of focus of, what can I do in the moment of the now to ultimately get me where I want to go? And that's just probably like, I'm not nearly as good at that as I want to be, but I think that I am decent enough at it that it allows me to keep worry out of my brain to keep me more effective at what it is I need to do.
I like it, man.
Yeah.
So if people want to find you, how do they do it?
Fuck, I don't know. I'm back on Facebook.
Go to Salem and shoot up a flare in a bad neighborhood. And
I'm cross my fingers, knock on wood. I'm back on Facebook for the first time in almost 2 years.
Oh, hey, welcome back.
They let me back on and they kicked me off, and now I'm back on. So it's Mike Nuss Facebook. Because I'm back on Facebook, I think I can now get back on Instagram.
Crossing our fingers.
Yes, which is at Rarebird_Mike. And then outside of that, cell 503-789-9821.
Oh my God, you got your cell phone on here. Oh my God, wow. Amazing.
I can always refuse to respond to people, so make sure that you intrigue me in that first message.
I do it all day. Yeah. So, it's totally understandable. Dude, thank you so much for this conversation.
Yeah,
I super appreciate it. He's a busy guy. He's out there. He's crushing it. Thanks so much, man. I appreciate it. This has been Mike Nuss. Do you want to throw in a quick Investor Lab plug as well?
Yeah, anyone in Portland, investorlab.com. It's actually more of a local in-person meetup thing, but if you're in Portland or anywhere near Portland, by far, hands down, you won't find a better networking event.
Is it less than $26,000?
It's $50 at the door. And I will tell you, like, just come to my market update. If you can legitimately tell me I didn't give you $50 of value in my economic presentation that lasts all of 20 minutes, first off, I'll tell you to go fuck yourself. Second off, that just won't happen.
It's true. I've seen many of these market updates, and I'm always on the edge of my seat. I'm not even making that up. I do it every single time. Come for the market update, stay for the presentation, but really come for the market update. He was up all night the night before preparing it. I just found that out today. You guys all know it now too. So give it up for Mike Nuss. So that was Mike Nuss. What a character. What a great guy. Little anecdote about Mike. A while back, I went to a real estate event where he was the keynote speaker. And when I was talking to him beforehand, I could tell he was in no mood to censor himself or put on a facade that day. So he gets on stage, and right there on the spot, he negotiates with the organizers the total number of F-bombs he's allowed to say on stage during his presentation. True story. I can't remember how many it was, but Mike was basically ensuring that he could be himself. He's got a wealth of knowledge on the market, on real estate investment, and he speaks with passion. And the whole point of cuss words is to emphasize what you're saying, to drive the point home, right? So to me, the F-bombs aren't gratuitous or uncouth. To me, it's passion, and I love it. So you've probably gathered by now that this is not a censored podcast. This is raw, real conversations with successful people, and oftentimes the brand of passion that breeds success results in a few F-bombs. But honestly, that's the way I like these conversations to be, authentic. I don't want to speak with somebody's representative or their PR team. I want the real deal. And if you're talking with Mike Nuss, you never have to ask twice for authenticity, for better or worse. And sometimes with Mike, it's for the worse, I'm not going to lie. But it's worth it. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Frozen Millionaires. Check out our socials by searching for me, George McCleary. And if we've earned a 5-star review, a subscription on YouTube, or a follow on social media, I love to see it. We'll see you next time, and until then, be sure to embrace the cold to ignite the dream.